Okay, thank you very much, Silke, and yeah, welcome back everybody. So there were several references to feeder systems before the break as one of the components that we need to think about when we're preparing a Smart Move AMC campaign. I'm just going to provide some more detail now about feeder systems, as prepared, as Silke said, by the University of York. So we'll make a start. So this is just a context diagram really we talked about some of these issues before, but we have public transport in peripheral rural areas. We have other factors that are influencing the use of public transport, the demographic dynamics. There may be unappealing features of PT public transport, and there can be subjective barriers to the use of public transport. It might be people aren't aware of the costs, they're not aware of the services. And as we discussed, that creates a spiral perhaps of low public transport use and increasing car dependence. And the feeder systems are one of the key elements of our AMC campaign that we're looking at. So this diagram starts to show what we mean by a feeder system. So the yellow route shown on this diagram is really the main public transport service through this particular area. As Roman said, that their campaign in the Waldviertel focused on one particular public transport route, and feeding into that route there are a number of smaller green connections here. And what we mean by feeder systems simply is how do people get to the public transport stop of the main public transport route. This could be as simple as walking down the road and getting to a bus stop or a train station, but particularly in rural areas it might be quite a long distance to the public transport stop, so people might consider cycling. How can we improve the facilities for cycling to public transport stops? Or there may even need to be another bus service that is a feeder system for the main public transport service if people are travelling a longer distance. So this is what we mean by feeder systems. And University of York have prepared a categorization starting to look at the different options for feeder systems. So on the left we have individual, what you or I might do to get ourselves to the public transport stop. So this includes things like non-motorized modes, walking and cycling, but also motorized use. We might take the car to a park and ride stop at the public transport. And then there are options available to the public transport operator to improve links to their main modes. So this could include flexible use bus systems, and we've got a couple of examples of those coming up. So some case studies prepared. So as I mentioned, bike and ride could be a way to encourage people to travel in a sustainable way to a bus stop or a train station. In this case, then, providing good bicycle storage facilities can be a good idea. Obviously, if people are parking their bike, it's nice to know it's protected from the weather and it's locked up in a secure location. So bike and ride facilities is something we can consider providing. When we were talking about active measures as well, that Oliver introduced, one of these things that could interest people in your campaign is providing something as like a bike surgery where people can bring their bikes and they can be fixed by someone who's available at the public transport stop. So these are the types of ideas you can start to introduce into campaigns to gain interest. Walking together, I mentioned obviously people can simply walk to a bus stop, but there might be concerns about safety or security, particularly for children. This is the idea of walking together, a pedibus or pedestrian bus, and this is common in particular in Austria as well. And this means that a member of staff from a school or another responsible person operates a bus where they have a timetable, and they could collect children from certain areas around a village, for instance, and they all walk together to then take the bus. So this is the idea of a pedibus feeder system. Intermodal transit schemes, I already mentioned using bicycles to access public transport. This is a development on that idea where it's the bikes are actually not provided by yourself, but provided by the public transport operator, so there could be shared bike systems, and your use of that bike is essentially included in your ticket cost for public transport. So you can borrow the bike for the day, drive it to the bus or rail stop, and then take the public transport. So one of the examples to look at would be Lübeck in Germany, if you're interested in that type of approach. We then come to what we were referring to as flexible bus transport systems. If people live a lot further away from the main railway or bus station, or where they're trying to get to, you could think about having a dial-a-bus system. So this operates similarly to a taxi, but the public transport operator tries to really coordinate the efficiency of the use of this. So essentially someone would dial up a call center and ask for a taxi bus service, and people would try, and then the public transport operator tries to match journeys so that they can put more people in a bus to then make the trip to the destination or to another public transport service. So there's a couple of examples listed there. And I think actually this is used by one of our partner organisations from the Rhine-Sieg area, and Bernd will be talking more about their taxi bus system later in the day. And then another form of flexible bus service is route deviation services. So unlike a taxi bus, which is very flexible, the route deviation services involve a bus that goes along a certain line to a form of timetable. But there's the opportunity for people to call and say, could you pick me up from here or here within certain zones, so that essentially there's the opportunity for the bus to pick up more people on its route. So that's the route deviation services. So that's a quick run through some of the feeder systems you might want to consider. If they're not operating in your area, then that's something you could maybe get feedback on through your campaign. Would this be interesting for you? As something a service that could be introduced in the future. So to draw on some final conclusions, then when we're thinking about feeder systems, obviously the integration between these services and the main public transport services is very important in terms of the information provided to people and timetables. Ideally, that a campaign about feeder systems would be introduced at a wider level, thought about at a regional level, so that you can capture the greatest number of people on your public transport routes. As was mentioned before, for Thessaloniki, there's good use of technologies such as mobile apps, which allows people to understand in real time when services are arriving, and this could be an important part when people are cycling or walking a distance to get to a public transport stop. They don't want to then walk there and be waiting for half an hour, as was suggested before. Key stakeholders, it's not just the city or just the public transport authority. You may be able to work with local groups to develop your feeder systems and understand what would be a good feeder system in your area, so you can look at fostering partnerships with local organisations. And as is a key theme running throughout, smart move marketing and promotion efforts are really important. And talking about the feeder systems during your campaign events, such as Easter markets mentioned for the Austrian example, are another important aspect. So that was the presentation on feeder systems. If there are any questions, I will do my best to